guys, it's Kira and Kirsten from Let's Paint Live, and we are here tonight to teach you how to paint summer blooms. And if you are not familiar with our Let's Paint Live program, it's part of our larger Let's Paint program. So if you go to plaidonline.com/letspaint, you're going to find so many different tutorials, free education, there's online classes, videos, step outs. We have Andy Jones and Donna Dewberry who will teach you to paint amazing florals. Donna Dewberry is famous for her folk art one stroke. Andy does a fun lunch and learn every week. So there is a ton of great free online content on our Let's Paint page. So I want to remind everybody, if you are just tuning in for the first time, don't forget to go to plaidonline.com/letspaint. So another thing with our Let's Paint Live is that you can watch live and paint along with us. And we love that, and we want to see what you're painting, comment who you're painting with, where you're painting from.
Sure, yeah.
We'll try to answer all your questions live. And if you're not able to make this time, you can watch the video on the Facebook Live on Facebook after the live ends. Or you can watch on demand at your time when you want to make some time for yourself, get together with your friends. You can go to our YouTube channel and you can watch this painting and all our Let's Paint Live classes or paintings on demand when you have time for yourself. Sorry, I got tongue-tied there. But so it's a great program, so definitely check it out, again, if this is your first time. Also, don't forget to hashtag your projects and your paintings that you're making with Let's Paint, and also hashtag Plaid Crafts so we can see what you're making out there. So Kirsten is going to walk us through Summer Blooms. So this beautiful, beautiful floral. She's got some great techniques to show us tonight, and we'll check back in with everybody.
So this is kind of exciting. We're going to learn some new techniques. The main technique that we're going to use today is how to add dimension and layers using just a simple palette knife. So all of this texture, all of the different colors that you see, most of it is done with the palette knife, which is great for beginners, great for any level of painter. So if you guys are joining us and doing the whole project, make sure the most important thing about this is make sure that you base coated your wooden canvas. Base coat it with licorice and make sure it's dry. And if you're just joining us and getting started, base coat your canvas and maybe hit it with a hairdryer because you want to make sure that it is dry and it is black before we get started. Little bit about why we're doing it on black is years ago I started base coating everything on black, and it just adds so much rich texture to all the different colors that you use. So instead of building highlight and shading onto a light palette, you're almost doing the opposite, which is quicker and easier, and it's almost foolproof. So that's why painting on a dark color is just something that I love. And you can do it with any painting, but I'll show you why it makes the colors just pop and richer for this particular canvas. Okay, so what you guys are going to need today, again, most importantly, is your base coated dry black canvas. And that you would have used the Licorice. So our folk art palette for tonight is the Licorice, which you've already used. Then we're using the Wicker White. We're using the Ballet Pink. We are using Parisian Rose. This one is Magenta. We are using Grass Green. Thicket is your dark green. And then Patina is your background or your blue. And another little tip about tonight, like you'll see in our painting, it's more of a muted color, but we did use this bright patina for the background. Another tip that I always think is great is if you start bright, you can always dull it down if that's a color that's better for your decor. But if you start dull, you can't get it bright. So even though this is a brighter color, if you like it bright, when we mix the background, maybe don't add as much of the black and the white that I'm adding. So that's just a tip when you're using a palette. You can always dull a color down if that's better for your decor, but you can never brighten it up. So that's a little tip for painting. Okay, so for the brush set, you are going to use the Folk Art Angle brush set, and you get 5 different variety great angle brushes. So we're going to use that. We are going to need, again, just a very basic plastic palette knife, and then a palette. I use palette paper. If that's what you like, you can use a paper plate, but whatever you like best for a palette. Always some paper towels, and always a brush basin. So that's what you'll need to get started.
Yep. And before we get started, I was just looking down at my phone here just to see who was joining us. So a shout out. We've got Kim, Shelly, Judy,
Hi.
Linda, Pat, Sharon, Elaine. So hi everybody, thanks for joining us. We hope you are painting along live with us, or you're gonna join us after. Like I said, if you wanna make time for yourself, have some me time, and you can watch our Facebook Live on demand on Facebook after the live ends, or you can watch this Paint Night Live or any of our other Paint Night Lives on our Plaid YouTube channel.
Yep.
So don't forget to check those out because you can just do it at your leisure.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So everybody keep checking in and we'll answer questions and say hi.
Okay, so to get started, we are going to apply our base coat, and all of our base coat is done with the brushes. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some paint on my palette. I am going to get a little bit of white, and one thing I always do with the paint on the palette is never add too much. You want just enough. You can always add more, but you don't want a big puddle on there. So I am going to do a little bit of white, a little bit of just the light pink, which is the baby pink. I'm going to do a little bit of just the light green. And again, this is just for applying our base coat. We're going to use all the colors a little bit later. So you're just going to put those three colors on your palette. Again, the white, the baby pink, and the cut grass. Is that right? Fresh cut grass, let me say. Okay, so get your 1/2 angle brush. And a tip for tonight is do not wet your brush. Our base coat is going to be applied with a dry brush. And the reason for that, again, is you'll see how the richness of the black base coat comes through. So a dry brush, don't get it wet. And again, this is our flat or our 1/2 angle brush. And so I am just going to put that in the white, and I'm going to load it a little bit, but again, you do not want too much paint on there because we're kind of doing a little bit of a dry brush technique. So I want you guys to view this painting as basic shapes. I think applying the pattern is sometimes super intimidating for people, and don't let it be if you're just looking at it as shapes. So the vase is a square, the flowers just are basic circles for when we start, and the leaves are just basic, almost like a triangle pattern. So when you look at it and break it apart like that, it's so much easier and not intimidating. So the first thing I'm going to do, again with a dry brush with a little bit of white, is I am just going to do a little box, and that will represent my base, or my vase, I'm sorry. And see how the black is coming through? That is what you want, because again, it's adding so much dimension to your painting. And if you want your vase sitting over to the side with a bunch of background, you could scoot it to the left, but I'm going to center mine right in the middle, about 2 fingers up from the bottom. So then again, just using the white, I am going to do a circle to the right of the vase. And again, very light. You can always add, but you can't take off. And another little tip is see how my edges are really, what's the word? Brush, soft, feathery maybe. That is great, just because then you never have a pattern that you're trying to cover. So then we're going to, again, just picking up a little bit of white. We're going to do that circle, that top flower, with a very soft feathered edge, because then you're never covering it up. And then the same with the last flower. And I'm just going to overlap a little bit of that vase. You don't ever want anything in a perfect row, so a little bit random. You don't want them ever to line up in a row or be exactly the same size. Looks a little weird, but I promise you it's going to get much better. So then, again, using a dry brush, I want to base coat my vase. So no water. You're only going to go into the water today to clean your brush. So you are, and the tip with this is don't be consistent. Don't go back and forth, because then what you're going to do is you're going to create a pattern. So you want to very loose and very random do strokes, just filling that vase. And pick up more white when you need it, but again, do not pick up a ton, because you want that black to come through, because that's going to be almost like the dark part of your painting.
So Kirsten, as you are filling in your vase, I just want to shout out to some more people. Patricia says that we are her motivation to start painting again. So I love that. Patricia, you have to paint and show us what you make. Hashtag Let's Paint and hashtag Plaid Crafts.
For sure.
We have someone from Scotland, Elaine from Scotland, Sherry is here, Chantel, Jane, another Sherry, Deborah. So hi everybody, we're so glad that you are painting along or you are going to watch this later.
Absolutely.
You're just enjoying, you know, maybe you have your favorite beverage and some friends and you're enjoying this tonight watching it, or you can go back and
watch it over the weekend.
Yeah, so we are painting Summer Blooms tonight. If you are just tuning in, if you're just able to join us now, Kirsten is teaching us how to paint this beautiful painting, and it's gorgeous for summer. And it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, and it's great. Like, it's just loose and easy, and anybody can do it, and it's just great home decor for your home.
I love all the techniques.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So again, it looks a little rough, but the key to this is make sure you don't cover up the black, and just make sure you don't have a repeat pattern, like polka dots or stripes. Make sure you're just very loose and almost like an uneven base coat pattern. Okay. So now we're going to go to our first flower on the right, and for that one, we are going to use the lighter pink and the same technique. What I like to do for the flowers, though, is because you do not want, can you see on this one? You don't want a circle. Even though we applied our pattern as a circle, you want that very irregular edge for your flower. So I am just going to go in, picking up a little bit more pink, and really keeping your brush dry. I'm going to create little random C strokes, the shape of a C, just to soften that circle pattern that you created. And again, some can be bigger, some can be smaller, but you want it to be very loose and random. And again, with not a lot of paint, because you don't want to cover up that black. It's looking rough, guys, I promise. It's going to get so fun and exciting when we use that palette knife. And then with this little flower, you're just going to put a little bit of pink in there. You don't want a lot because that's our darkest flower, but just to kind of break up the black background. Then you're going to do the same thing with the flower in the middle, and because that's our lightest flower, again, your choice. You can use the baby pink or the white, but just know that you want to keep that base coat very, very light. So I'm going to do little C strokes, like that one's little, do a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. You just want to soften the edge of that circle that you did to create your pattern, and then you want to add a little bit of feathered color in the middle. And then the same with your last flower on the left. Little C strokes to break up that circle. A lot of black. I like to leave a lot of black because that's just all of that dimension. You can never go back in there and add black. So
we have some people asking what kind of paint we're using. So
we're using Folk Art acrylic paint. Yep. Greatest paint ever. I mean that.
Yes. And you want to go through the colors again real quick?
I sure can. Okay, so licorice you would have used to base coat your canvas. We're not going to use that anymore in this painting. Oh, I lied. We are. We're going to use it to darken up some of our colors. But then wicker white, baby pink, Parisian, I always get this one wrong, Parisian pink, magenta, fresh cut grass, the dark green is thicket, and then our background is patina. So that's the palette that we need. But again, have fun with it. If you want your background to be yellow, have a yellow background. But we just, we're choosing this for tonight. But have fun with it.
Love that.
Okay. Any more questions?
No, just hi everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Beverly, we're using Folk Art acrylic paint. And hi, Messy from Texas. And yeah, hi everybody.
Okay, then we're going to keep going. Yep. Okay, so you have a very rough, simple base coat. So now you can either clean this brush, which I am going to put it in the water, but I am going to pick up this smaller, let's see, this is a 1/4 angle brush. So again, don't drip that in the water. You want that to be dry. And using our green that's on there, I'm going to load it. Again, not too much though, because you do not want to cover up your painting. So I am just going to do the pattern. And again, they're almost like, I don't know, kind of like a triangle, kind of like, what are those?
Like a pointed oval?
Like a pointed oval. I love it, but that's true. So I am just going to apply the pattern. And again, very feathered, very light. You just want placement. 2 leaves up on the top. You want it very light and feathery. Now, this little corner where you see, let me show you guys that. See where we've got the buds and kind of the fresh greenery? Don't apply anything for that yet. We'll do that in a minute because that technique is mostly with our palette knife. So I'm just doing these big leaves. The bottom, 2 up on top, and then 2 pointy ovals over here. Okay, and then once you've done that, do the same technique that we did with the flowers, just a very loose, feathery base coat, and only using that light green. Okay, so you should have kind of the composition of your entire piece, except for those little bouquets, and we will add that in a minute. Okay, so now we're going to go on to some of the other colors that we didn't put on our palette. You're going to add the magenta to your palette. You are going to add, you're going to add a little bit of the medium pink. And then a little bit of the dark green. And you know, when you load your palette, don't put your colors too close together, just because, and that's just a little basic tip, just because you want to be able to access each one. Okay, so now we're going to add a little bit more base coat to our flowers. So I am going to pick the 3/8 flat brush, which is like your second to smallest one in the set. And I am going to do, again, using a dry technique, I'm going to pick up that darkest magenta, and I am just going to do, again, just a few random, very feathered brush strokes to create another layer of base coat. Because that's our darkest flower. But again, the most important thing is don't cover up that black. All of that layered is what creates all that dimension. Okay, and then I'm going to use the same brush, but the key to this is don't clean it in your water. Just brush it a few times on your paper towel. Then I'm going to pick up the middle pink, which is that Parisian pink. Again, not too much. And I am going to do those random dry brush strokes on my medium color flower. And really, again, the only key to this is don't create a consistent pattern. Be very random and very loose with that. Like right there where that overlapped that's perfect. You want to do that. You just want to feather that color on there. Okay, and then again, don't put your brush in water. Dry it on the paper towel. And pick up the lightest pink, which is the baby pink, and you're going to do the same thing on your middle flower. And you'll see you get a little bit of the color you used before. That's wonderful. You kind of want that. That's why we're not using a perfectly clean brush that we cleaned in the water. Okay, it's getting cuter, right? All right. I'm going to actually clean that brush that I'm using, and that is the 3/8 inch. Once you're done with your pink, think I'm going the right speed?
Yeah, how's everybody doing out there? We good? Everybody able to keep up? Just let us know how you're doing in the process.
Okay.
So yeah, everybody
we
sounds
think we're
good.
doing okay?
Yeah, I think everybody's doing good. We had some questions about what kind of surface we were using. So we're using a 10 by 10 wood panel.
Yep, a wooden canvas. You can see I'll sneak the back. It's just a wooden canvas that you can get at any craft retail.
Right. And you could use a regular canvas if you wanted to. So.
Absolutely.
And then you painted it.
Fun.
Yeah, and it's almost easier to paint on, I feel like, with the dry brushing technique.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't give. It's perfect for for
Yeah.
any canvas technique. Got a
Yeah.
little drip of water when I was cleaning my brush.
Yep. So I
Okay.
feel so short today.
I'm so tall
Yeah,
in
I
my
have to
stool.
say that I
like
usually
that.
wear heels. It looks funny when I was watching the video.
It's the first time I'm short, so I'm tall, so I like it.
Yes, but it looks beautiful, and I love the technique, and I
Well,
think everybody out there is enjoying it.
The base coat is, it's not the end result. Just keep that in mind, but you got to have that to get all the dimension. So I washed my 3/8-inch brush, it's a mouthful, in the water, but again, make sure that you dry it off really good on your paper towel. You don't want to use a wet brush today at all. So for this, all I'm going to do is just, again, add to the base coat of the leaves. So this leaf right here, you'll see, is a little bit lighter. So I'm going to add just a few more brush strokes, feathery and random, to that leaf. This leaf down here, you'll see, is light. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the light green with that. And then over here, I'm going to do one dark and one light that you'll see in the finished painting. So just a few random. You don't want a harsh edge, and you don't want a repeat pattern. And then I'm going to dry that brush off on my paper towel and pick up the dark green, and I'm going to add some loose base coat brush strokes to that top leaf and then to that big bottom leaf on the bottom. Okay, so you should have pretty much everything base coated. Okay, so now's a good time. Maybe wash off all of your brushes.
We have a question.
Okay.
So someone wants to know why you would not paint the background first. Just a different technique. You're going to go in and fill in the blue, the patina.
Oh, you know why? Okay, and maybe
That's a great
with
question.
this technique, that is a great technique, because normally, traditionally, you base coat your painting yellow and then you paint on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is normal. But with this, with the dark background one and with the palette knife, it just adds so much dimension if you've almost got a separation between what you're painting and your background. So it gives you more shading and highlighting if you do your background last.
Yeah.
Which it is weird, because normally you would always base coat your background color and let that dry.
That's a great question.
It's really just with the black background and with the palette knife. It just adds to the dimension.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
That is a great
yeah,
question.
thank you.
She probably thought I was crazy. Maybe. Okay, so now for her, we are going to do the background now. So, and this again was a little tip that I said in the beginning. So, patina, beautiful, bright, wonderful color. Perfect if it matches for you, but I want to tone it down just a little bit. So I'm going to have a little bit of white and a little bit of black on your palette. So for this, because it's our biggest area, oh look, my little brush is floating in the water. Oh, okay.
Yep,
Perfect.
up a little bit so everybody can see.
I'm going to use the biggest brush, which is the 5/8 angle brush. Again, don't get it wet. I've said that enough, I'm sorry. Okay, so here, can you guys see my palette? Okay, so in my patina, I'm going to scoop up a scoop of white, and I'm going to put that right next to my patina, and barely, black is tricky. You can always add more. So just like, boop, you're barely touching your brush in that black. Black will change a color way quicker than you want it to. Less is more. And I'm just kind of gonna muddy that color until it's the color of the patina that I like best. And the neat thing is, when we get to the palette knife, you'll actually add some of that patina in, but for the majority of the base coat, you want a little softer color. So mix that color, and then remove a little bit of it on your paper towel, and then we're going to use that same technique for our base coat, or for our background. Now make sure you create that little line that is the table that the vase is sitting on. So I'm just going to create that little line so I know not to go below that. And then, and here again, the same technique as before. You don't want to be consistent back and forth. You don't want to be consistent horizontal. You just want to do very loose brush strokes. And I like to jump around a little bit, only because you've got less paint on your brush there than you do there. So it helps keep it very soft and inconsistent, which is what you want. And they're almost like little hash strokes. And you want to go, you don't want to outline. Don't outline your leaves, don't outline your flowers, because then you're creating a pattern. You want to very random, do a little bit there, a little bit there. Because if you create a pattern, you're going to be disappointed in your background. You want it to be very loose. I know I've said it a million times, but don't cover up all your black. See how it's very loose? See how, to her question, that was great. See how there's a little bit of black dividing the background from the leaves? That's just a really great look for this technique.
Yeah. So we have another question. Would you need to add a gel medium to the paint?
No, because gel medium makes the paint wet longer, like makes it flow and brush. You kind of want it to drag and be dry because that's what's giving you kind of that feather technique. So no, you want that dry, almost like, you know when you use a stencil brush, it's very dry and it's very...
It's almost like you've offloaded, but you're just doing a real dry brush.
So no, you don't want to add that. You want it to be very feathered and very soft.
Yeah, again, great question. I love all these interactive, great questions from everybody.
I agree.
And I can't wait to see what everybody is going to paint. And
I hope they're beautiful.
They're going to be amazing.
So pick up paint when you need it, but again, don't use too much. Now we will do, I always do, just because, I always do my edges last. If you want to do your edges now, you can go in there with the blue and just do the same thing on your edges that you're doing to your top, or you can wait till at the very end. Some people like to hold their paintings while they're painting, which I normally don't, so that's whatever's best for you. But always make sure you complete your edges.
And it's going to dry so fast because you are dry brushing.
Yeah, you're barely using any paint. So we'll just get on there and do our edges a little bit.
It's really fun to watch the overhead shot that we have right now. You can see the finished and then the one you're doing and just the transformation and the layers that you're building up. It's a really neat shot.
It's going to happen, I promise.
It's a great step out.
And just make sure right here you've kind of, you know, maybe stroked a little bit this way or added a little bit more paint, but to soften that line that you created.
And someone wants to know why the angled brush and not a flat one?
The angle brush is really just my preference because I like to have that little bit of an edge to just get into smaller areas, which you could technically do with a flat brush. It's just so much easier with an angle brush.
Got it. Good.
So you've got that little weird spot in the middle. So just add a little bit of blue in there just so that everything is base coated. Looks pretty funny now, right? But it's gonna be great. Okay, so again on your bottom little table that your vase is sitting on, I'm gonna use, let's see, what is this? Your 1/2-inch angle brush, and I washed it because we used it earlier. So again, just make sure it's dry on your paper towel. And on here, I'm gonna pick up a little bit, oh, there we go, a little bit of the white and the tiniest, again, the tiniest amount of black. Like well, you can't even see it. It's like just the tiniest little corner in black, and I'm going to make a really soft gray. Make sure it's not too much on my brush. I'm going to take that off on the paper towel. I want it a little bit darker. And then same thing. I want it a little bit darker. Do it whatever color you like best, but I am going to have it be a little bit darker for mine. And then again, I'm just going to do very loose, random brush strokes. Makes such a great noise.
It's very quiet while you're painting. And we had another question, why dry brush? And I think that's because you get that really painterly look, like you said, and you get to see that really rich black background comes through.
Because if your brush had water in it, all of this soft feather technique, it wouldn't work. Like it would almost be like a solid base coat. And then here again, what you do to the front, do the side. So add a little bit of the gray base coat to that bottom section of your canvas. Just very loose and random. Okay, that beautiful base coat is done, which that's kind of cute. you know,
I
it's a
love
whole
it.
different
Like I
technique,
said, the
but
transformation, you can see
Yeah.
the two in progress. It looks
it's
amazing.
really kind of cute. Okay, so I think we're done with our brushes for now. So I'm going to put those in the water.
I think this is the fun part.
I know this is the fun part.
Yes.
So again, I just have a very basic palette knife. It's a little plastic palette knife. Some are bigger, some are pointier, but whatever palette knife you like best. So I'm trying to think if there's any tips to using the palette knife. So when you use a palette knife, you want to stay flat on your surface. Like you don't use it like this. We're going to be doing a lot of almost like
It's like
buttering
icing a
toast.
cake or
Yes, yes. Peanut butter, icing. So think of that. So you're going to load paint, but you're just going to really skim across the surface. So that's a tip. And another thing is with a palette knife, you never apply a ton of pressure. Like you're not pushing down and dragging. Again, like a cake or like, you know, toast, you're just skimming across your surface because that gives you all of that great dimension. It's almost jumping across your canvas. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is we are going to start with our little white vase. And I am going to need a little more white. So I am going to put more white on my palette. Okay, and again, if you need a new palette, switch if you maybe put your colors really close together or if you're out of colors, but make sure you definitely have some space around it because with the palette knife, you're going to need that space. All righty then. Okay, so again, loading the bottom, you are going to kind of slap the palette knife into the white. We're using the white first. And can you guys see that? Does that show up good? Okay. And you're just kind of spreading out your little pile of paint. You don't want like a giant mess. You want to almost scoot it off of where you applied the paint to your palette. You want to scoot it off and just really cover the bottom of that with the first color we're using, which is white. Okay, so once you've done that, I kind of move my painting in the direction that so that I'm dragging towards me, but whatever's comfortable for you. So I am going to start on this side of my vase. I'm going to apply my palette knife, and again, don't push it down. You're just going to set it on there and then kind of drag it. And you're going to get, each palette knife is going to be different, but see how you get a real dark white, you get some texture, you get some bumps. That's what you want. So I'm going to pick up some more white, and I'm going to start on that same edge, and I'm going to skim down and then just drag it across. And you could, like I've got a lot of paint there, you can go pick that up and skim that across the top. You're almost outlining, then I'm going to turn my canvas this way, you're almost outlining your base. So I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to drag up for the bottom of the vase.
And so we have another one.
See, I'm starting there and I'm dragging up. And then for this side, again, I'm just going to slap that on the paint. I'm going to start on this side, kind of lay it on its edge to create that starting point, and then I'm going to just drag that across the surface. And see, your base coat is one shade of white, your black is bringing out that dimension, and then the white that you're adding with the palette knife is just giving you all of that texture. Okay, so a little bit of white, a little bit more, and again, have fun with this. If you want it to be a lot brighter, add less with the palette knife, but if you want a lot of that black and gray to show through, add less. So now I'm gonna, and you gotta be careful with this, you're only gonna use the tip and you're gonna get a little bit closer to where your flowers meet your vase. And you're just kind of smearing that around. You don't want it to be consistent. Now something that I love, see where that went out of my base coat? I love when that happens because you're just creating, you're almost creating like an impressionistic artwork that's got really loose edges. So don't be upset if that happens. So you're just adding all of that texture. So that's your vase.
And someone asked
Okay.
that you're mentioning how to fill that in, if it matters what side you start with or how you come in.
No, it doesn't matter at all. I guess I don't know. I guess I start everything on the right, whether it be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a canvas. So no, you can start on either side. The main thing is you don't want to apply a lot of pressure and you don't want to go back and forth. Because usually a palette knife is
Like
spreading and getting a consistent base coat. You don't want that. You want to apply it, get paint when you need it, and you almost want to jump across the surface. So that's really the only tip with using the palette knife.
Right.
So we're going to switch colors. So I'm going to get all the white off on a paper towel. No need to use water. And now we're going to do the same thing with each flower. So I'm going to start on this dark flower. I want to make sure you guys can see it. So this dark flower. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pick up the magenta. And again, I'm just almost slapping that on the edge of the paint on my palette. And you're loading the bottom of that palette knife.
No. Keep going.
So I'm loading the bottom of that palette knife. And this is with your magenta, your darkest pink. So we're doing our darkest flower, don't forget. So again, you don't want to keep smearing. You don't want to put a lot of pressure, but you are just going to, with a very light touch, you're going to outline, getting paint when you need it. You're going to outline the edge of your flower. I'm going to turn that canvas a little bit, turn it when you need it. And see where that jumped onto the blue? Again, that's what you want because it just adds so much character. See, you've got a little bit of your base coat showing. You've got the pink, the black. That's what gives you all of that dimension. I'm going to turn that a little bit, and I'm going to get these petals at the bottom. Okay.
Beverly had a question. Are you adding anything to the paint to give it that texture?
No, that's the great thing. And as weird as this sounds, the texture really is the black. So it's textured because it's great, thick, wonderful, high quality acrylic. But what you're seeing in all that dimension is really the black coming through. So the magic of the dark base coat is something that I love.
I'm excited that everybody's getting to try this, and this is a new technique that we haven't done.
Yes, and it's for anything. It doesn't have to be just for a floral. You can do it with anything that you're wanting to paint. Okay, so we're going to do the same technique. I'm going to move to our medium color flower, and I am going to pick up that medium pink. And again, I'm just moving a little bit of paint to the side of my main puddle of paint, slapping on that. And then again, I'm not going to press hard, but I'm just going to drag that to outline very loosely the edge of that flower. Turn your canvas as you need to. And here's a great part. See how it's overlapping the white? That's just more dimension. Do not think that is a mistake. It is not. I'm going to go a little bit over that white. Layering it and overlapping is something that you want to do. Like you had this little blue section in the middle. You want a little bit of pink to go over that blue just to create that dimension. Okay, so let me turn that back. I'm going to clean off my palette knife again. There's no need for water, don't forget. If you've got a little bit of pink on there, that's okay. And I am going to pick up that lightest pink. That's the baby pink. I'm just going to load that by tapping into the paint. And then again, I'm going to do the same thing with this middle flower. Just going to see, that was perfect. See how it just adds all of that dimension, both over your base coat and over the black. It picks up a little of that pink. Again, that's a good thing because it's just adding character to your flower. I'm going to turn that so I can do the bottom. I know I love the palette knife because like to do that with a brush, I mean, it'd be so hard and intimidating, whereas the palette knife does all of the blending and shading for you. Okay, so you should have more layers. You should have chunky layers within each flower. And now I want you really to just have fun with it. So my darkest flower, I base coated with the magenta. Now I'm going to go back with the medium pink. Again, picking it up only on the palette knife. And I'm just going to do that, maybe more of that technique only in the center. So you don't need to go necessarily all around the outside edges. I'm just going to almost create a center for that flower. See how that's okay? And then I am going to pick up a little bit more and actually just have fun, be creative. I'm going to pick a little bit of the magenta at the same time. So see how I have two colors on my palette knife? Just going to kind of load it like that. And this is really just to add a little bit more texture. You don't have to keep adding texture, but add as much as you like. Always when you change colors drastically from light to dark, always clean off your palette just on a paper towel. Let me flip that over. So I need a little bit more baby pink on my palette. I'm going to put that on there. Oops. Okay, so on our middle rows, I'm going to do the same technique with the white. Just slapping the end. And you know, you don't need to load your palette, I should have told you this earlier, all the way up to the end, because you're mostly using the top half. So load the top half, and on our middle rows, we're going to just skim over that with the white. Skim over that with the white. For some reason, I work best going that way, so that's why I move my canvas.
Well, that was a question someone had.
I know.
So move the canvas as you need.
Yeah, as it's comfortable.
I think that's with the palette also. It makes it easier to move your canvas.
I think so too. Absolutely. And then on this little one on the left, I'm going to pick a little bit of the baby pink up. I'm going to load that. And I am just going to scoot that over the dark. Just like that. A little bit outside the edges. And then this time we're done with the pinks. So really give your little palette knife a good cleaning on a paper towel. You want it to be pretty clean. So now I'm going to pick up now we were doing about half of our palette knife. Now we're going to do about a third of our palette knife. And I'm going to pick up the lighter green. And again, I'm just loading almost the bottom third of that palette knife. Not too much paint. You don't want it oozing over the top, but you want a good amount on there. And for your leaves, what you're going to do, maybe we'll start with this one. You're going to start at the tip of the leaf, and you're literally just going to drag. You're really softening that edge, and you're creating like shading and highlighting at the same time. Start at the tip, and then pull around the edge of each leaf. I'm going to get a little bit more for this one, and I'll do it on this one. So I'm putting my palette knife on the tip of the leaf, and I'm just kind of following that same pattern. Get paint when you need it. Oh, and that's not bad, because we're going to go back and add that, but that's a little bit of white that we picked up, and that's okay. So you're just going to get a really soft, random edge. Whoops. I'm going to do this one up here. I'm going to start where the leaf would start. And I'm just going to randomly go. But see how great that is? Because you've got the black separating it, you've got dark, so you've just got all of that texture. And do the same thing with the dark green. And I did not clean my palette knife because having a little bit of that light green on there just adds to the dimension. So I'm going to go in on that dark leaf. Again, I'm going to start at the tip, and I'm just going to come that way.
And I'm just going to remind everybody, we have a couple while you're finishing the leaves, and
sure.
people are watching you do that.
Yeah.
Just to remind everybody that you can watch this live on Facebook. I'll get in here and tell everybody, hey. You can watch this live after our Facebook Live ends on Facebook, or tomorrow it will be on our Plaid YouTube channel. So you can go and watch this Facebook Paint Night Live, or you can watch any of our other Paint Night Lives on our YouTube channel. So I know a couple people are just joining us, and so you can watch this anytime. You know, if you're not painting along, go back and you can watch this and paint along when you have time to go ahead and do this for yourself.
Sure.
So just I wanted everybody to remind them and remember that.
There's so many great paintings on there.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to clean our brush our palette knife one more time, and we are going to go back before we do our background, and we are going to do that little bouquet You can kind of see it. I guess it's not a bouquet, but those little buds that are kind of on the left side of your painting. So for that, all I'm going to use is the palette knife. And even though we have a background, that's okay because you should have a lot of black coming through there. So the first thing I'm going to do is load a little bit of magenta. And I am just going to create almost like a little half circle. And I'm going to do just 3 random shapes, 3 little, almost like a thumbprint. How about that? That's better. So a little thumbprint with the edge of your palette knife. You want the blue to show through. You don't want them to be perfect. You just want them to be about a thumbprint size with the dark magenta. Then you're going to go right back and get a little bit of the medium pink, and you're going to highlight one side of those with your palette knife, and you're just adding dimension. And then again, just a very little touch of the baby pink. See how that creates almost like where the sun would hit it, where the light would hit it? Then you're going to clean your palette knife, and you are going to fill in the spaces around that with the green. I'm going to get just a little bit of the fresh cut grass, and you're almost wrapping around the bud of that flower, creating like a little baby rosebud. And you're just filling that area, very loose and random. Then I'm going to get a little bit of the dark green and just go right over that light green. You're just adding a little bit of something up there to give it some character. You don't want it to be exactly the same on both sides. I always like to go in with a little bit of white. Now this is a spot you got to be careful. You don't want too much. So I load the white on my palette, but then I get a good bit of it off just on a little open space of your palette. And with a very light touch, I'm just going to kind of scrape very lightly over my leaves, over my flowers. But see, can you see on there? See, you're just getting the tiniest little highlight, almost where light would hit it. Very little. Remember, you can always add more, but you just want to barely use that palette knife to just skim over that, creating those tiny little highlights. Okay, now we're going to clean off our palette knife one more time really good, and we're going to have fun with the background. Okay, so I need more paint, so I am going to mix the color that I used, and I'm going to need some white. You kind of need a good bit for this, just because your background is your biggest area. I'm going to get a little bit more patina. I'm going to put that right over the color that I mixed before, which is not a problem. And I am going to mix, I'm not going to take all of my patina. I'm going to leave a little bit, because we're going to highlight with that. Got a little bit of pink on there. Get that off. And I'm going to mix it with the white. Again, I'm going to leave a little bit of white clean on the end. So I'm just going to mix that in the middle. And same thing here, just a touch of black, because black changes your color so quick. You do not have to get that color to be exactly the same color as the base coat that you did with the dry brush. In fact, if it's not, that's a good thing. Want it to be close, but it does not have to be exact, because again, you're creating dimension with all these different colors. So I've got my base coat or my background color mixed on there. You got a lot on your palette knife, so maybe clean that a little bit on your paper towel. And then load your palette knife just like you did before. Okay, so working on the background, I like to start around my painting. So again, you're not going to outline it and push down, but you're going to pick a spot. So I'm going to pick the leaves and the top of the flower, and you're going to start at the top and lightly drag following that edge. You're going to pick up paint as you need it, but you want to have a very light touch, because if not, you'll get a solid blue background, and that's not at all what you want. You're just loading that palette knife. Whoops. Again, really working with the the top half, and you're just dragging that around your flowers. I'm going to turn that and just let it skip. And all those things where people would think that's a mistake, like the blue got over the pink. That's not. That's great. That's like character. You're getting in there, but you're definitely keeping that black showing. I'm going to turn it again. I guess I can only butter toast a certain way. I did not know that until tonight. I can only pull towards me for some reason. There's no right or wrong way, though, to use a palette knife. So if you like to pull left to right, that's fine. For some reason, I just learned tonight I like to pull towards me. The only key to this is just be very random and very light to the touch. See right here, I'm going to go around it, leaving some black, leaving some base coat. If you do get a big spot like right there, don't smear it back and forth, but just skim over it, and that will soften that. I'm going to do a little bit in the center, just to add texture to right there where my roses meet my vase. Again, I'm going to do right here, picking that up and going around the edge. Okay, so you should have a pretty textured, light, mostly the same color blue background. And here again where it's fun. So on my palette, I'm going to pick a little bit of that patina right out of the bottle. I'm going to let it hop a little bit into the color I mixed. I think that's a good thing. So on your palette, you're almost double loading. Donna would be so proud. Donna, I'm double loading a palette knife. So you've got two colors on your palette knife. And again, if you want bright just on that side, if you want it on both sides, just randomly add, I'm going to do that, randomly add that bright patina to little sections of your background. Oh, I love that. I love how that patina just brightens it up a little bit. Who knew a double-loaded palette knife?
You're starting a new trend.
Oh my gosh. I'm sure Donna's done it a million times. And then I'm going to do the same with the white. I'm going to put a little bit of white. I'm going to double load again. A little bit of white, a little bit of the blue, and I am just going to skim that. I always like to add a little bit of the lighter color along the edge. Don't be consistent though. Don't do it all the way around. But you just want to kind of pop that in again, maybe where the light would touch the painting. Ta-da!
Love it.
So you have a beautiful background with tons of texture, tons of different brights and darks. And now for the end, all we're going to do is the same thing with the gray. So again, clean off that palette knife just on a paper towel. Get those edges really good. I am out of white paint again, so I'm going to put some white on my palette. A little touch of black. I'm going to mix that into my white. Again, darker, lighter, whatever's best for you. You can make that dark bottom really close to black, or you can make it a really soft gray, which works better for me. I'm going to mix that on my palette knife. And then I am going to, a little tip when you do have such a long, consistent, straight line, is to load a good bit more of your palette knife, almost the whole bottom, just because it moves the paint faster and you cover more area. And I am going to start on that harsh line where my background and my table meet. And then I'm just going to kind of drag down. But again, very loose so you don't cover up all that black. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom of my vase and just kind of drag that down. And then the same thing on that side and just drag that down. But making sure, like see when that happens, that's my favorite because you get all of that texture. And then I'm going to pick up just a little bit of white and again letting it mix with my gray and just create a little highlight, maybe on the edge, maybe on the bottom, and maybe not at all if you don't want to add any white. So now our canvas is done. Oh, except we have to, what you do to the top, you have to do to the sides. So I'm going to do, and that is very easy. It just makes your painting look absolutely finished. So I'm going to pick up the blue, and I am just going to very lightly skim. You can see that? Skim that palette knife on the side. A little bit of the lighter blue. Again, you're not being, you can't mess that up. You don't have to be consistent, but you always want the sides to match the top. I'm going to just spread that on there. I'm going to do it on this side. Perfect. I'm going to clean up my palette.
Beautiful.
Do the same to the bottom. There we go. Get paint when you need it. Okay. And then you have a beautiful canvas.
Summer blooms.
Dry. Summer blooms.
So everybody, thank you so much for joining us, painting Summer Blooms with Let's Paint Live. Again, if you were painting along with us live, or you can watch this on Facebook once the live ends, or on demand on our YouTube channel tomorrow. And also check out plaidonline.com/letspaint to get our whole entire free online education program. There's tons of videos, tutorials, and product, and just a ton of stuff with Andy and Donna Dewberry and Kirsten and Jesse, and the whole team has a ton of content on there for you. So if you love this, you will love that. Don't forget to hashtag your paintings that you've done with us. Hashtag Let's Paint, hashtag Plaid Crafts. I'm trying to think what else I need to tell everybody. So I have a preview of next month's painting, which is September already, which is crazy.
I know. School starts.
Yes. So we are going to be doing Sunset Cactus.
That's one of my favorites.
So beautiful.
Ever.
Love the colors, that beautiful coral.
All of it. It's perfect.
So this will be September 5th, and we'll go ahead and get the event listing up soon. So don't forget to put this on your calendar for September 5th at 7:30. Again, we'll be live, or you can watch it after with us.
Perfect.
So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.